So this is El Salvador, and the mission is just like a triangle. You've got your map on it, and so my first area was in Opico, up in the top, and then I flew over to Belize, and in El Salvador, then we are blessed to have the temple, El Salvador temple, and their number of stakes. The church is fairly strong there. In lots of areas, it's still kind of starting up, but I never served in a branch in El Salvador. They were generally at least wards, kind of small wards, lots of times, but they all had wards. But in Belize, then the church has only been there for about 30 years. And so there are 2 districts, and they still don't have wards or stakes yet. And so there are only branches. There's a branch in Orange Walk, in Coruscant, and there are 2 in Belize City. There's 1 in Belmapon, 1 down in Dangriga, and there's a couple over in Cayo over here. And down south, there still aren't any missionaries yet. Overall in Belize, there are only about 70 missionaries. When I got there were about 30. And so I got to see that growth a little bit. Our mission president focused on that a lot. So yeah, in Belize you get to see things starting out. They're really close to getting stakes though, so the branches are getting pretty strong. But down in like Dangriga, then they only get about like 30 members there. You know, it started about 30 years ago. In Belize, in El Salvador, it's been there a little bit longer, but still there's a lot of members there that remember the beginnings of the church in El Salvador, and that's really cool. You get to talk to people who were in like the first branches there in San Salvador, and they have seen it split and grow, and so there's a lot of people that have seen that just in their lifetimes. They've seen the church growing quite a bit, and so it is a rapidly growing sort of a place. El Salvador, like as a nation, has generally been more Catholic, but they do have a lot of evangelicals, and I think that's what they call them, and Jehovah's Witness and whatnot. And in Belize too, I think it's generally about like that too, a lot of Jehovah's Witness. And so of course you always get lots of fun stories about like what people think about the church. And I think the favorite one I ever heard was that they heard that as Mormons then we smoke weed to communicate with Joseph Smith, which is a pretty good one. Generally you just get the basic idea that we worship Joseph Smith as a god instead of God, and so that's the main thing you want to help people understand, that we do believe in Jesus Christ, and we believe that we need, well, the guidance of God through his prophets as well. One interesting thing that I guess I didn't expect was there are a lot of illiterate people in El Salvador. Like the schools aren't so good. So younger people, usually they can read, and they can't read super well, like they read a little slow, but old people, generally they can't read, or even if they did read before, then their eyes have usually gone bad and they can't read anymore. And so it's a little harder for them to get a testimony of the Book of Mormon and things. You want to go and read with them, try and get them a tape or whatever, and help them to get those things. And the other main things, you get a lot of people, more in Belize than El Salvador, but both of them a lot. You get a lot of people who do drink a lot. There are a lot of people in Belize that smoke marijuana, and so you want to help them to understand the word of wisdom. And in both countries as well, it's pretty expensive for the people to get married, or it's not too bad. Like in El Salvador, generally if you get a member of the church, then you can get somebody married for like $25 or something, which is a decent amount there. But what's harder though is that it's really hard to get divorced. That costs an awful lot, and so generally they're hesitant to get married. And so most people in both places, they generally live together without getting married, which is really sad. And so that's something you want to prepare for and be able to help the people with. I served in Opico in El Salvador, and then I went to Belize. I was in Orange Walk for 7 months, and I loved that area because I was there for so long, and I got to know it really well. I really loved those people. And then I was in Belmapon for 3 months, which was also very cool. Very nice jungly mountains down there. And then I went back to El Salvador after that, and I was in Sonsecate, in La Ponderosa, and lots of very humble people there. And I finished my mission in San Salvador, in La Cima, which seemed super fancy for me at that point, because I had been in a third world country for for almost 2 years, but not quite as fancy as the U.S.